Aisha never believed that small moments could change lives, but this one did. It was a cold morning when she first saw him in the library. He was sitting in the far corner, head bent over a pile of old books. His clothes were simple, almost too simple. Plain shirt, faded jeans, and shoes that had clearly been worn too many times. To her, he looked like just another ordinary boy, someone who blended into the background so easily that most people would not even notice him. Aisha, on the other hand, was different. She was bright, lively, and always surrounded by friends. People liked talking to her, and she liked helping others. That morning, when she walked past his table, she noticed something unusual. The boy was struggling with a heavy book bag that slipped from his chair and fell onto the floor. Books scattered everywhere, some sliding under the table. Without thinking twice, Aisha bent down and helped him pick them up. "Thank you," he said softly, his voice calm and polite. He did not look at her directly, just a quick glance before lowering his eyes again. "No problem," Aisha replied with a smile, expecting at least a little conversation. But he gave her nothing more. He just gathered the books, nodded, and returned to reading. That was the first time she met Daniel. Over the next few days, Aisha noticed him again and again in the library. Always in the same corner, always quiet, always with his head buried in books. He never joined any group, never laughed loudly, never drew attention to himself. Most students barely noticed him. To everyone else, he was just ordinary. But Aisha could not ignore him. Something about his silence, his calm way of moving, made her curious. One afternoon, Aisha decided to sit near his table. She pretended to read, but her eyes kept drifting toward him. He wrote quickly in a notebook, sometimes pausing as if lost in thought. She wanted to ask his name but stopped herself. He did not look like someone who enjoyed talking much. Finally, fate gave her a chance. One of his pens rolled off the table and landed near her feet. She picked it up and handed it to him. "Here, this is yours," she said kindly. He looked at her for a brief second, his eyes dark and serious. "Thanks," he whispered, then returned to his notes. Again, no conversation. Just short words, polite but distant. Aisha shook her head and thought, he really is ordinary. Just another boy who wants to stay invisible. But inside, she felt a strange pull toward him. Why was he always so alone? Why did he avoid everyone? Days passed, and slowly small details about Daniel caught her attention. He never carried a phone, at least not where anyone could see it. He avoided the cafeteria during busy hours and usually ate alone in a quiet corner. Sometimes, she saw him disappear quickly from campus, as if he didn't want anyone to follow. One rainy evening, Aisha again found herself crossing paths with him. The library was closing, and she saw Daniel standing outside, waiting under the shade of a tree. She thought he was waiting for a bus or maybe a friend. But then, something strange happened. A black car stopped at the far end of the street. Daniel walked toward it quickly, opened the door, and slipped inside. The car drove off almost instantly. Aisha froze. Why would an ordinary boy have a car waiting for him? And not just any car, it looked expensive. Her heart beat faster. She tried to tell herself maybe it was just a coincidence. Maybe it belonged to a friend. But deep down, something didn't fit. Ordinary boys didn't have drivers waiting for them. Ordinary boys didn't disappear so quickly. The next morning, she tried to push the thought away, but she couldn't. The image of that black car kept coming back. And Daniel, quiet, simple Daniel, was suddenly not so ordinary anymore. She sat in class, staring out the window, wondering who he really was. Why was he hiding? What secret was he carrying? And more importantly, why did she feel like her own life was about to change because of him? The mystery of Daniel had only just begun. After that night with the black car, Aisha could not stop thinking about Daniel. She told herself not to overthink, but her mind kept replaying the moment. The way he slipped inside the car so quickly, almost like he didn't want anyone to see, it made her even more curious. The next day, she went to the library again. And there he was, in the same corner, sitting with his books. Nothing about him looked different. His clothes were still simple, his shoes were still old, his face calm and quiet. If someone else saw him, they would say he was just another ordinary student. But Aisha knew better now. Something about him didn't fit with the picture he showed the world. She decided to break the silence. Walking over, she smiled and said, "Hi, I see you here almost every day. What are you studying?" Daniel looked up, a little surprised. He hesitated, then replied, "History. I like reading about the past." His voice was soft but clear, and for the first time, he spoke more than one word to her. Aisha felt a small victory inside. She sat down across from him. "That's interesting. I like history too, but sometimes it feels heavy." Daniel's lips curved into the faintest smile, almost unnoticeable. "It teaches us more than we think," he said, then returned his eyes to his notes. That was it. Just a few lines, but enough for Aisha to feel something change. She had opened a small door, and maybe, just maybe, he would let her see more. Days turned into weeks, and slowly their paths crossed more often. Aisha made excuses to sit near him in the library. Sometimes she asked questions about books, sometimes she just said hello. At first, Daniel answered with short replies. But gradually, he began saying a little more. She learned he loved reading, not just history but also poetry. She discovered he had a calm way of explaining things, almost like a teacher. She realized he was kind too. Once she saw him quietly buying food for an old guard outside the library. He didn't tell anyone, didn't show off. He just gave it and walked away. These small things made Aisha curious in a new way. Not just about his secret, but about who he really was. He wasn't ordinary. He was different, calm, kind, respectful, and mysterious at the same time. One afternoon, as they were leaving the library together, Aisha asked, "Why do you always sit alone? Don't you want friends?" Daniel looked at her, his eyes serious. "Not everyone needs to be surrounded by people," he said. "Sometimes, silence is safer." That answer struck her. Safer. What did he mean by that? Aisha wanted to ask, but before she could, his phone buzzed. It was the first time she saw him with one. He pulled it out quickly, turned his back, and whispered into it. She only caught one word. "Yes, sir." She froze. "Sir? Who calls an ordinary boy sir?" Before she could ask, Daniel hung up and slipped the phone back into his pocket, his face calm as if nothing had happened. "I have to go," he said quickly and walked away. That night, Aisha lay awake thinking about him. She wasn't sure what she was feeling anymore. It wasn't just curiosity. There was something about Daniel that pulled her closer every day. But the more she tried to understand him, the more questions appeared. The next week, something else happened. She was in the market, buying fruit, when she saw Daniel on the other side of the street. He was carrying a small bag, nothing unusual. But the shopkeeper rushed to him with too much respect, bowing slightly as if Daniel was someone important. Daniel only nodded politely, paid quickly, and walked away. Aisha stood there, shocked. Ordinary boys didn't get treated like that. Ordinary boys didn't have strangers calling them, sir. Her mind was racing now. Who was Daniel really? Why was he hiding behind simple clothes and quiet manners? And yet, despite all the questions, she couldn't deny one thing. Her heart had started to beat differently whenever he was near. His silence felt like a puzzle she wanted to solve. His kindness felt like a story she wanted to hear. Aisha knew one thing for sure. She was no longer looking at Daniel as just another ordinary boy. He was someone special, someone different. Someone she needed to understand. But she had no idea that her growing connection with him was about to pull her into a world she never imagined. A world full of secrets, power, and choices that could change everything. Aisha tried to convince herself that Daniel was just shy, that maybe she was imagining things. But deep down, her heart told her something was different. The small signs around him kept growing, and every day she felt the mystery of Daniel becoming bigger. One evening, as she entered the library, she found Daniel already there, sitting quietly with his notebook. He looked the same as always: plain shirt, old shoes, hair a little messy. To anyone else, he was invisible. But to Aisha, every detail about him screamed of hidden truth. She sat near him and asked casually, "You never talk much about your family. Don't you live around here?" Daniel paused for a second. His hand holding the pen froze. Then he gave a short answer. "They stay busy. I live alone most of the time." It was not a lie, but it didn't feel like the truth either. His eyes avoided hers, and she knew he was hiding something. Aisha didn't push further. But later that night, she saw something that confirmed her doubts. The library was closing, and she walked out just behind him. Instead of walking toward the bus stop like most students, Daniel moved toward the back street. Curious, Aisha followed at a distance. At the end of the lane, a dark-colored car waited. It was sleek, shiny, the kind of car only rich people drove. Daniel looked around quickly, then stepped inside. The car drove away in silence. Aisha stood frozen in the dark, her heart racing. Why does an ordinary boy have a car like that waiting for him? The next day, she tried not to think about it, but her eyes kept searching for signs. And she found them. When they went to the cafeteria together, Daniel reached for his wallet to pay for tea. For a moment, Aisha's eyes caught something unusual: his card. It was black, with a golden edge. She had never seen such a card before. She knew it wasn't a normal bank card. People only carried those if they belonged to the world of the wealthy. "Is that?" she began, but Daniel quickly slipped it back inside, handing the money before she could finish her question. "Nothing special," he said quietly. His calmness only made her more suspicious. Later that week, Aisha saw another strange moment. She and Daniel were walking through the market when a shopkeeper spotted him. The man's face instantly changed, eyes wide, voice respectful. "Good evening, sir," he said, almost bowing. Daniel nodded politely and whispered, "Thank you," before walking away quickly. Aisha stopped in her tracks. Ordinary boys did not get that kind of respect from strangers. Ordinary boys were not called sir. Her mind was full of questions, but Daniel's face remained calm, as if nothing unusual had happened. It was as though he had learned to live with secrets, to carry them without showing the weight. That night, Aisha lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Every detail replayed in her head: the expensive car, the strange phone call, the black credit card, the respect in people's voices. Who exactly was Daniel? And why was he pretending to be ordinary? The mystery pulled her deeper, but so did her emotions. With every secret she discovered, her heart grew more connected to him. He was kind, yes. Gentle, yes. But he was also surrounded by something she could not understand, something bigger than both of them. One rainy afternoon, she finally tried again. Sitting across from him in the library, she leaned forward and whispered, "Daniel, can I ask you something? Who are you, really?" For a moment, he froze. His eyes lifted slowly to hers. There was silence, long silence. She thought maybe he would tell her the truth. But then, he gave a small, sad smile. "Just an ordinary boy," he said softly, then returned to his book. Aisha's chest tightened. She knew it was a lie. She knew he was more than that. But she also knew he wasn't ready to tell her yet. And so the mystery grew. Aisha was caught between curiosity and affection, between questions and feelings she could not control. Daniel was hiding something big, something powerful, and sooner or later the truth would come out. She just didn't know that the truth was far greater than anything she could imagine, and it was waiting for her, just around the corner. Aisha's heart carried a storm of questions. Every time she looked at Daniel, she saw the same quiet boy with simple clothes and gentle eyes. Yet, around him floated signs of another life: luxury cars, strange respect from strangers, the secret of phone calls. He never explained, and she never stopped wondering. One evening, everything began to change. The library had just closed, and Daniel walked out with Aisha by his side. The sky was painted orange by the setting sun, and the streets were quieter than usual. For once, Daniel did not rush away. Instead, he turned to her and said, "Would you like to come with me somewhere?" Aisha blinked, surprised. He had never invited her anywhere before. Her heart skipped, but curiosity pushed her to nod. "Yes," she whispered. They walked to the street where the same black car waited. The driver stepped out and opened the door with a respectful bow. Aisha froze for a moment. She had never been this close to the car before. The leather seats inside looked too expensive, too polished for an ordinary boy. Daniel noticed her hesitation. "Don't be afraid," he said calmly. "Trust me." Something in his voice gave her courage. Slowly, she stepped inside. The car moved silently through the city, leaving behind the noisy streets. The more they drove, the bigger Aisha's questions grew. Where are we going? Who is he really? Finally, the car stopped in front of a massive gate. Beyond it rose a mansion so grand it looked like a palace. High walls surrounded it, guards stood at the entrance, and the driveway sparkled with lights. Expensive cars lined the sides, each one shining like treasure. Aisha's mouth fell open. She could not believe her eyes. This cannot be his home, can it? The guards opened the gate at once, bowing their heads as Daniel walked past. They didn't even ask for his name. They already knew him. Aisha's footsteps grew slower. Her heart raced. She whispered, "Daniel, what is this place?" He looked at her, his eyes calm but serious. "It's my home," he said simply. Her world shook. Home. This mansion? Inside, the air smelled of roses and polished wood. Chandeliers sparkled above, and servants moved quietly, bowing to Daniel as he walked past. Every corner spoke of wealth and power. Yet Daniel moved like it was nothing unusual. Aisha felt lost. Her mind screamed with questions, but her lips stayed silent. She followed him down the grand hallway until they reached a large room with golden curtains and tall windows. There, sitting gracefully on a velvet chair, was a woman. She was elegant, dressed in a silk gown, her presence strong and commanding. Her eyes sharp, yet warm. Aisha could tell instantly, this was no ordinary woman. Daniel's steps slowed. He walked forward and bowed his head slightly. "Mother," he said softly. Aisha gasped. "Mother." The woman's eyes shifted to Aisha, studying her from head to toe. There was no anger in her gaze, no coldness, only curiosity and power. Aisha felt small under her stare, almost as if the woman could read every thought in her mind. Daniel spoke gently. "This is Aisha, the one I told you about." Aisha's heart nearly stopped. He told his mother about me? The woman stood slowly, her movements graceful, every step filled with confidence. She walked closer, her eyes never leaving Aisha. Then she smiled faintly. "So, this is the girl." Her voice was smooth, calm, but it carried weight. Aisha bowed her head nervously, unsure what to say. She felt like she had stepped into another world, one far beyond her own. The woman circled her gently, then stopped in front of her. "You look simple, but there is honesty in your eyes. My son does not speak about many people, yet he spoke of you." Aisha's lips parted in shock. She wanted to reply, but her voice refused to come. Her heart pounded too loudly in her chest. Daniel's mother placed a hand on Aisha's shoulder and smiled. "I am glad you are here." At that moment, Aisha realized the truth she had been searching for. Daniel was not ordinary. He was the son of a millionaire family, heir to a fortune, living under shadows to hide his identity. And she, an ordinary girl, was now standing in the heart of his hidden world. The weight of the secret pressed on her chest. Questions swirled. Why had he hidden this? Why had he acted poor when he was rich? And most of all, what did his powerful mother think of her? Aisha didn't know it yet, but the answer was about to change everything. The grand room fell silent after Daniel's mother spoke. Aisha stood frozen, her hands trembling slightly. She had never imagined herself in a place like this, standing before such a powerful woman. Everything felt unreal: the sparkling chandeliers above, the golden furniture around her, and the fact that Daniel, the quiet boy she thought was ordinary, belonged to this world. Aisha's heart whispered, "She must hate me. She will never accept someone like me." But then Daniel's mother surprised her. She stepped closer, her eyes calm yet sharp, and said, "Sit down, child." Aisha obeyed, her legs heavy as she lowered herself into a velvet chair. Daniel sat beside her, his hand resting calmly on his lap. His silence gave her no clue of what was about to come. For a long moment, Daniel's mother studied Aisha. Her gaze was not cruel, but it was piercing, as if she was looking directly into Aisha's soul. Then she spoke softly. "My son has told me about you. At first, I did not believe it. He rarely speaks about anyone. He is surrounded by people every day, but he trusts no one. Yet when he mentioned you, his voice carried something different, something I had not heard before." Aisha's chest tightened. She didn't know what to say. She only lowered her eyes, her voice small. I did not know who he really was. I thought he was just ordinary." At that, Daniel's mother gave a short laugh, elegant but strong. "Ordinary? My son has never been ordinary. He is my only child, heir to everything I have built. But perhaps it was important that you saw him that way. Perhaps that is why he chose you." Aisha's eyes lifted in shock. "Chose me?" Daniel's mother walked toward the tall window, looking out at the garden where fountains sparkled in the night light. She spoke without turning back. "I have seen many girls try to come close to my son. They looked at his money, his name, his future. But he pushed them all away. He wanted someone who would see him for himself, not for what he owns." Slowly, she turned back to Aisha, her eyes soft now. "And you, child, you treated him like a normal boy. You sat with him, you spoke with him, you smiled at him. That is why he kept you close." Aisha's lips parted, but no words came out. Her heart was beating faster and faster. Then came the moment she could never have predicted. Daniel's mother walked forward, her graceful hands resting on Aisha's shoulders. She looked straight into her eyes and said, "I want you to become my son's bride." The words struck Aisha like thunder. Her breath caught, her mind spinning. Bride? Did I hear that right? She stared at Daniel, who looked back at her silently, his expression calm but filled with hidden emotion. He did not deny it. He did not stop his mother. Aisha whispered, almost in disbelief. "Me? But I am not rich. I am not from your world. Why would you want me?" Daniel's mother smiled gently. "Because wealth is already in this house. What it needs is something money cannot buy. I see honesty in you, and I see love in his eyes when he looks at you. That is worth more than gold." Tears stung Aisha's eyes. She felt unworthy, small, overwhelmed. But what if I fail? What if I cannot fit into this life? Daniel's mother held her hands firmly. "You will not fail. You will keep my son grounded. That is what he needs most. A woman with a simple heart, who reminds him of the world beyond luxury." The room fell silent again, but this silence was heavier, filled with emotions that Aisha could hardly bear. She looked at Daniel once more, searching his eyes for the truth. Finally, he spoke, his voice deep and calm. "I did not tell you before because I wanted you to see me as I am, not as my family's name. I wanted you to know the real me. And now, my mother knows what I feel. Aisha, I want you by my side." Her heart twisted with emotions, fear, shock, but also warmth. She thought of all the moments they had shared in the library, the small smiles, the kindness he had shown, the mystery that always surrounded him. It was never about money. It was always about him. Still, the weight of his mother's words pressed on her. A proposal from a millionaire's family was not a small thing. It was not just about love, It was about stepping into a life she had never dreamed of, a life that could change everything. Aisha lowered her head, her mind drowning in questions. Could she say yes? Could she walk into a world so different from her own? Or would this proposal turn her life into something she could not handle? The choice was in her hands now. And it was a choice that could shape her destiny forever. Aisha's heart felt heavier than ever. The words of Daniel's mother echoed in her mind again and again. I want you to become my son's bride. She sat there in the golden room, surrounded by wealth she had never imagined, yet her chest felt tight with fear. She had always lived a simple life, where love meant honesty, where friendship meant trust. But here, in this world of power and riches, she wasn't sure she belonged. Daniel's eyes were fixed on her, calm but hopeful. His silence spoke louder than words. He wanted her answer, but he wasn't rushing her. He understood her confusion. Finally, Aisha found her voice. It trembled as she spoke. Daniel, why didn't you tell me before? Why did you hide this life from me? Daniel sighed deeply. His shoulders dropped, and for the first time, she saw the weight he carried. Because I didn't want you to see all this first, he said softly, looking around the mansion. I wanted you to know me, the boy who loves books, who enjoys quiet, who values kindness. Not the heir of a fortune. If I told you from the start, maybe you would have looked at me differently. Aisha's chest tightened. She remembered the library, the scattered books, the small smiles, the moments he showed kindness when nobody was watching. Those were the things that touched her heart. Not the mansion. Not the cars. Not the money. His mother stepped forward again, her eyes warm but firm. Child, I know this is not easy for you. But love is never easy. My son needs someone who sees him as human, not as a name. And you are that person. That is why I ask you to become part of this family. Aisha's hands trembled in her lap. She whispered, but I am not rich. People will talk. They will laugh at me. Daniel's mother squeezed her hand gently. Let them talk. It is not their life. It is yours. The room grew silent. The sound of the fountain outside filled the air as Aisha looked at Daniel once more. His eyes carried no pride, no arrogance, only hope and love. Finally, Daniel spoke again, his voice steady. Aisha, I don't care about the money. I care about you. I care about the girl who picked up my books, who sat beside me when no one else did. That is who I want. If you cannot say yes, I will not force you. But know this, I chose you with my heart, not with my name. Tears rolled down Aisha's cheeks. She realized that from the very beginning, Daniel had never lied about who he was. He had shown her his true self, quiet, kind, and real. The mansion and the riches were just shadows behind him. Her heart whispered the truth she had been afraid to admit. She loved him. Slowly, she wiped her tears and nodded. Yes, Daniel. I will be by your side. For the first time, Daniel's face softened into a full smile. Relief and joy filled his eyes. His mother, too, smiled warmly, her hands clapping softly together. Then it is decided, she said with pride. You will not regret this choice, Aisha. You have gained not only a husband but a family. Aisha felt her chest lighten. The fear slowly melted away, replaced by a strange peace. She wasn't stepping into this world for wealth or power. She was stepping into it for Daniel, the boy she once thought was ordinary, the boy who turned out to be extraordinary in the most human way. As the night grew darker, Aisha looked out at the glowing garden beyond the windows. She thought about her journey, the quiet library, the black car, the unanswered questions. Every moment had led her here, to this choice, to this new beginning. She whispered softly, almost to herself, I never thought my life would change like this. Daniel, standing beside her, replied gently, Neither did I. But sometimes, the best things come when we least expect them. And with that, Aisha knew her decision was the right one. She wasn't marrying a millionaire's heir. She was choosing the boy whose silence had hidden a storm of secrets, but whose heart had always spoken the truth. Her ordinary world had turned extraordinary. Not because of money, but because of love.